You think admitting you're wrong is about the facts. It's not. Here's the proof. Someone hands you the receipt, the screenshot, the fact check, the thing that should end the argument right there. And you don't feel relief. Your jaw tightens, your ears get hot. You argue harder, not less. If this were really about facts, more facts would fix it. They don't. They make it worse. Which means something else is running the show, and it's been running it for about 100,000 years longer than you have. There's a scene in The Matrix where a man named Cypher sits down to a steak he knows isn't real. He watches it glisten on the fork, and he says, "Ignorance is bliss." He's not confused about the truth. He knows exactly what's real. He's choosing not to deal with it, because dealing with it costs more than pretending does. Hold on to that scene. By the end of this video, you're going to understand that Cypher isn't a science fiction character. He's a documented, measurable, load-bearing feature of your brain, and he's been making choices for you all week. Psychologists call the mechanism cognitive dissonance. A researcher named Leon Festinger coined the term in 1957, and the definition is almost too simple for the damage it does. Your brain hates holding two beliefs that can't both be true at once. I'm smart, I know what I'm talking about, and I was just proven wrong. Those two thoughts grind against each other, and the grinding produces real, physical discomfort. Not a metaphor, an aversive state you can measure, like hunger, like pain. And your brain will do almost anything to make it stop. Here's the part nobody warns you about. There are two ways to stop it. Option 1. Change the belief. Admit the mistake. Expensive, humiliating, slow. Option 2. Change the meaning of the evidence. The source is biased. That one time doesn't count. You misheard the question. Option 2 is cheap, instant, and invisible. You don't even notice yourself doing it. Guess which one your brain picks. And if you think you'd notice, that you'd catch yourself rewriting reality in real time, Festinger already proved you wouldn't. In 1959, he and a colleague named James Carlsmith ran one of the most quietly devastating experiments in the history of psychology. They had students perform a task designed to be mind-numbingly boring, turning wooden pegs a quarter turn over and over for an hour. Then they asked each student for a favor. Tell the next participant waiting outside that the task was fun. Actually fun. Some students were paid $20 to tell that lie. Others were paid just $1. Then came the real test. Afterward, each student was asked privately, honestly, how enjoyable was the task? The students paid $20 said what you'd expect. It was boring. I lied for the money. Clean transaction, no discomfort. But the students paid $1? They said the task was actually kind of enjoyable. They weren't lying to the researcher. They had changed their own memory of the experience. Because $1 isn't enough to justify lying. And I lied for almost nothing collides head-on with I'm an honest person. So the brain quietly resolved the collision the cheap way. Maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe the task really was fun. The belief bent to protect the self-image in under an hour for $1. Now take that machine, the one that will rewrite an hour of your own memory to avoid a moment of discomfort, and put it where it was actually built. Around a fire, 40,000 years ago. Picture the scene properly. Ancient humans lived in bands of maybe 30 people. Not 30 followers you can mute, 30 faces you will see every single morning for the rest of your life, in a world where the next band might be 10 days' walk away and might kill you on arrival. That fire is not a campsite. It's the entire social universe. Your food comes from those people. Your safety when you're sick comes from those people. Your children survive because those people agree you belong. Now, imagine you're the one who reads the signs before a hunt. You've told them the ritual matters, the markings, the order of the steps. and the hunt fails, badly. Someone's brother doesn't come back. Do you stand up in front of the only 30 people in your world and say, "I was wrong. The ritual means nothing. It's always meant nothing"? Think about what those words cost. Not embarrassment, position, trust, your place in the circle. Among ancient humans, being seen as unreliable wasn't a bad afternoon. It was the first step toward the edge of the group, and the edge of the group was where people died. So the ones who said the wind was wrong, the ones whose brains smoothly, sincerely, believably produced the explanation that kept the story intact, they kept their seat at the fire. They had children, and their children inherited brains slightly better at doing the same thing. Run that selection for a few thousand generations, and you get us. A species whose brains were never built to find the truth first. They were built to protect our standing in the group first, and to label that feeling being right. Ancient humans didn't fail to admit they were wrong because they were stupid. They refused because, where they lived, being wrong out loud was more dangerous than being wrong in fact. You inherited that exact brain, unpatched, and here's how far it will go when the stakes get big enough. In 1954, a Chicago housewife named Dorothy Martin began receiving what she said were messages from a planet called Clarion. The messages told her the world would end on December 21st, a great flood, and that flying saucers would come beforehand to rescue the faithful. A small group formed around her. They called themselves the Seekers, and they didn't half believe. They quit their jobs, sold their houses, gave away Christmas presents early because there wasn't going to be a Christmas. One follower left his wife. These were not fools. Some were educated professionals, and they paid everything they had. Leon Festinger heard about the prophecy in a newspaper and saw a once-in-a-lifetime experiment assembling itself. What happens to true believers at the exact moment their belief is disproven, not argued against, disproven by the world itself? He planted observers inside the group and waited for December 21st with them. Midnight came. The group sat in silence, coats ready. No saucer, no flood, nothing. Clocks in the room disagreed with each other, and for a while they clung to that. Maybe it wasn't really midnight yet. Then it was 4 a.m., and the excuses were gone. Dorothy Martin began to cry. This is the moment the whole machine hangs on. 30 centuries of philosophy say these people should update. The evidence is total. The belief is dead. At 4:45 a.m., Martin announced she'd received a new message. The group's faith, their vigil that very night, had been so powerful that God had called off the flood. They hadn't been wrong. They had saved the world. And here is the detail that should keep you up tonight. The believers who had paid the least kept their jobs, kept their homes, hedged their bets. Those people drifted away quietly, embarrassed. But the ones who had given up everything, they didn't leave. They called newspapers. They gave interviews. They stood on the sidewalk trying to convert strangers, something the group had never done before the failed prophecy. Disproof didn't shrink their belief. It converted belief into evangelism. Festinger published the whole account in a book whose title says it all: When Prophecy Fails. Why? Why would losing more make you believe harder instead of less? 5 years later, psychologist Elliot Aronson, working with Judson Mills, isolated the answer in a lab. They had college students undergo an initiation to join a discussion group, and they secretly varied the price of entry. For some students, the initiation was mild. For others, it was genuinely humiliating, reading mortifying material out loud to a stranger. Then, every student sat through the exact same recorded discussion, engineered to be as boring as possible. Droning voices, pointless topic. The intellectual equivalent of watching paint dry. Then they asked each student, how good was the group? The students who got in cheap told the truth. It was dull. The students who paid the humiliating price called the same boring discussion interesting, worthwhile, something they were glad to be part of. Same recording, same droning voices. The only difference was the price of admission. Because I suffered for this, and this was worthless, cannot both be true, and the suffering already happened. It's unchangeable. So the brain changes the only thing it still can, the verdict. It must have been worth it. Look what I paid. That's the engine, confirmed twice over. The seekers who lost their homes needed the flood to have mattered. The students who were humiliated needed the boring group to be gold. Ancient humans who staked their name on a ritual needed the ritual to be real. The price paid doesn't make people question the belief. The price is the reason they can't. And if you're thinking this is all just behavior, soft science, people saying things, it's not. You can watch it happen in the meat. In 2004, psychologist Drew Westen at Emory University put committed political partisans in a brain scanner and showed them statements where their own candidate blatantly contradicted himself, caught red-handed in his own words. Then, Westen watched which parts of the brain did the work. The regions associated with cold reasoning, the ones that should light up when you weigh evidence, stayed quiet. The regions associated with emotion and threat lit up instead, wrestled the contradiction into a harmless shape, and then, this is the part that matters, the brain's reward circuitry fired. The same general circuitry involved when an addict gets a fix. The brain didn't just dodge the uncomfortable truth, it gave itself a treat for dodging. Read that again. Your brain physically rewards you for explaining away evidence. Rationalizing doesn't just feel neutral, it feels good. That's why you reach for it in a tenth of a second, while honesty is still putting its boots on. Now, everything so far costs arguments, money, maybe a few wasted years. Here's what it costs when the person refusing to be wrong is holding a scalpel. Vienna, 1847. A Hungarian doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis is working the maternity wards of Vienna General Hospital, and he is staring at a horror. In the ward run by doctors, mothers are dying of childbed fever at catastrophic rates. Some months, 1 in 5 women who walk in to give birth leave in a coffin. In the ward next door, run by midwives, far fewer die. Same hospital, same city, same kinds of patients. Semmelweis hunts the difference and finds it. The doctors are coming to deliveries straight from the autopsy room. They dissect corpses in the morning and deliver babies in the afternoon, without washing their hands. Germ theory doesn't exist yet, but Semmelweis doesn't need it. He orders every doctor to wash in chlorinated lime before touching a patient, and the death rate collapses from double digits to around 2%, almost overnight. The evidence is a mountain. It is sitting in the survival statistics of his own hospital. The medical establishment's response? They didn't just ignore him, they were offended. Because look at what Semmelweis was actually asking Europe's most respected physicians to believe. You, the healers, the gentlemen, the men of science, have been killing your own patients for decades. The mothers who died because of your hands. Every doctor faced the same 2 thoughts we started this video with, scaled up to nightmare size. I am a healer, and I have carried death from the morgue to the maternity bed. That gap wasn't uncomfortable, it was unsurvivable. So they took option 2. They attacked the evidence. They mocked the theory. They ran him out of the profession. Semmelweis grew obsessed and broken, wrote increasingly desperate open letters calling obstetricians murderers, and died in 1865 in an asylum. It took another generation and Pasteur's germ theory before the world admitted the hand washer had been right all along. Nobody counts exactly how many mothers died in those intervening decades because trained scientists could not say 4 words. It wasn't ignorance, the evidence was there. It was dissonance. The same circuit that saved ancient humans at the fire, now killing women in hospital beds. Because the cost of "I was wrong" had grown into "I am a killer." And no brain volunteers for that. That's the true shape of this thing. It's not a quirk that makes arguments annoying. Unmanaged, it's a force that can hold civilization back for a generation at a time. So, can it be beaten? Here's the strange, hopeful twist. The machine has a reverse gear, and a founding father found it 200 years before Festinger named it. Benjamin Franklin, as he tells it in his autobiography, had a problem. A rival legislator in Pennsylvania who opposed him, disliked him, and couldn't be won over with favors or flattery. So Franklin did something backwards. He asked the man for a favor, the loan of a rare book from his library. The rival, caught off guard, sent it. Franklin returned it with a warm note of thanks. And from that day, the man who had never spoken to him became friendly, helpful, eventually a lifelong friend. Why? Because the rival's brain now held two clashing thoughts. I dislike Franklin, and I just did Franklin a kindness. Dissonance. And the cheapest fix wasn't to regret the book. It was to update the feeling. I suppose he's not so bad. The same machinery that makes cult members double down quietly talked a man out of his own grudge. The engine doesn't care which direction it runs. It just closes gaps. Point it carefully, and it closes them in your favor. Which brings this back to you, because you've run this engine already this week, and I can prove it. Ever stayed in something, a relationship, a job, a course, a friendship, well past the point you privately knew it was done? Not because you lacked evidence, because leaving meant standing at the fire and announcing the verdict on your own years. I paid all that for nothing. Ever defended a purchase you regretted, a plan that was visibly failing, a belief you'd repeated so many times in public that it had stopped being an opinion and become part of your face? That flash of heat when someone questions it, you know now what that is. That's not conviction. That's the seam where the two thoughts grind. Go back to Cypher one last time. Steak on the fork. He knows it's code. He eats it anyway, because by then, admitting the truth means admitting how much of his life he already spent believing the lie. The seekers on the sidewalk at dawn, preaching harder than ever. The students praising a discussion that bored them stiff. The doctors of Vienna scrubbing their reputations instead of their hands. Ancient humans at a dying fire, blaming the wind. Same steak, same math, different centuries. So here's the actual assignment. Not a thought, an action. Sometime this week, someone is going to prove you wrong about something small. You'll feel it arrive, the heat, the tight jaw, the excuse already loading. When it comes, say 4 words out loud. Okay, you're right. Then just stand there and time what happens. The discomfort you've spent your whole life avoiding lasts about 10 seconds. That's it. That's the monster. 10 seconds of heat, and then something unexpected on the other side. The argument's over, the other person softens, and you walk away as the rarest thing in the room. A person whose beliefs can survive contact with evidence. Your ancestors couldn't afford those 10 seconds. Being wrong out loud at their fire could genuinely cost everything. But their fire went out 100,000 years ago. And you're still paying protection money to it. You were never defending the facts. You were defending a seat at a fire that no longer exists. Say the 4 words. Let the fire go. The seat was always yours anyway.